Hey guys, welcome to another video. Sorry about technically not uploading yesterday, but in today's video, you guessed it, we're starting a new series. And I seen a lot of people kind of do this. Not really, but a button simulator type of game. This can teach you honestly a lot about scripting, cause well, even though the base mechanic is just touching buttons, I'll try to make it a little bit more unique than that. So let's get started. The first thing we should do is actually create our stats. So in server script service, hit the plus and insert a script. Let's rename this to ls for leader stats. You can remove this print hello world. And we can do game.players.player added connect function player. So this gets when the player is added to the game. In other words, when the player joins the game and we're attaching a tag to that player and we're calling them player. You can make this like PLR or something, but then you have to change up the script. But this first parameter is gonna be whatever the player is. If you add a different parameter, then it's just gonna be for something else. So unless there's other specific parameters, but let's create a stats folder. So local stats equals instance.new folder, parent it to the player. So this creates a new instance, attaching it to a variable called stats. A new instance is like pressing the plus and then inserting a folder. And then this is pretty much the same thing as doing stats.parent equals player. We're parenting it to the player. Just neater here, I guess. Then we can do stats.name equals leader stats. Things that are called, or if you make anything in a folder called leader stats goes into the player list, so it'll show like the stats in the top right. If you don't want this, then you can still create this line of code. You just don't put the stats in the actual folder. So let's do local cache, or let's do cache equals instance.new number value stats cache.name equals cache and cache.value equals 0. So this creates a new instance which is a number value and we put it in our stats folder. We set its name to cache and make its default value 0. Unless you want the player to start off with like 500 cache, then well, you may do whatever you like. Then in most button simulator games there's a multiplier, or pretty much all of them. So let's do local multiplier equals instance.new number value. I'm gonna keep this one in the player. Yeah, cache or no multiplier dot name equals multiplier. Actually, we don't have to capitalize this because it's just gonna be in the player. No one's gonna see it. It'll make it easier for us to type out, not by much, but it helps us. So we're making a new instance, which is a number value, putting it in the player this time, naming it multiply, and we're gonna set it to 1 because to add our multiplier to the stats that we want to our cache, so we can increase our cache times that multiplier. As you know, if you do know, anything times 0 will be 0. So we're gonna keep it at 1. So at minimum, they're gonna get a pretty. How do I explain this? Let me just do this part first. So we're gonna do a loop while wait, and then how long you want it person to wait. I'm gonna do 1. And let's just change this to task.wait because, well, it's more accurate. So let's just do that. And then player.cache or player.leaderstats.cache.value plus equals 1 times player.multiplier.value. So this is going to get the value. This is going to loop every 1 second. You can change this delay interval to whatever you like. This is getting the player's leader stats, the cache value. The leader stats is the folder, and then the new cache value we made. And we're going to get the value from it, and we're going to increase it by 1. Then we're going to multiply it by the multiplier value. So let's say the person has 10 times multiplier, it'll be 1 times 10. So they'll gain 10 every second. So that's what I was talking about earlier. If we make this is by default 0, 1 times 0, well, that's 0. The player isn't going to be able to gain any stats, and well, we want them to be able to gain something, right? So once we got that, we can go ahead and test the stat system. We should be able to gain cash every second. As you can see, every second it's increasing by 1 cash. Oops. So that's nicely done. Later on, or so let's just get, this is going to be the setup of our game. So let's create ourselves a little button over here. Should I make it? I'm just gonna make it a circle. So a cylinder. You may make this how you want, a mesh, a model, and you do you. I'm going to make this the base of the button. Just gonna make this a little gray color. Duplicate it, shrink it down, scale it taller. Then just gonna make it a bit red. I'm gonna use part color for this, it's better. So we got ourselves a nice little button here. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't know. Oops, I might have just selected the base plate. So we got ourselves a button. I'm just going to make this a tad bit or bigger. Just a little bit like this. And I'm going to group it. Or actually, yeah, let's just go ahead and group it. Or I'm going to put this part inside of it. I'm going to name this button. Actually, let's organize these into folders. I'm just going to name this button 1. I'm going to put the button parts inside of the folder so we can add parameters in here. So that's the button, and then that's the base of the button. We select the folder. Let's just select both parts. So this is going to be our button. So in our button 1, let's hit plus and let's insert a configuration folder. This is just to neaten this out. Let's just name this config, simpler. So in our config folder, we are going to add a few values. The first one is going to be, let's insert a number value and let's name it the price. So the price is going to be how much you want the player to actually have to spend to actually use the button. Then we can duplicate this, and then we can name this, let's say, multi to add. So this is how much multiplier we want to give the player when they actually touch that button. So let's set our price. I'm going to say 100 cash, and the player will get 5 multiplier. So there's a few ways we can do this. I'm going to show you the first way, which is the way I might be doing this whole series. Inside of server script service, hit the plus, insert a script. I'm going to insert another folder into workspace, and I'm going to name this buttons. I'm going to put this in here. So I'm going to rename this script to button handler or button manager. So this is going to manage all of the buttons. So local buttons equals game.workspace.buttons. This is making a variable, and we're just getting the workspace and then the buttons folder. So this might not be the neatest way to do this, but let's just do local button 1 equals buttons dot button 1. So we want to get button 1. So let's do button 1 dot button dot touched connect function hit. So this is making a variable to get the button 1 folder. This is getting when somebody touches the parts, or when anything touches the part for that matter, and we're going to pass hit. Hit is what's going to be what hit the part. So we're going to do local player equals game get service players get player from character hit dot parent. So we're getting a service in the game called players, and then we're going to get the player from the character. So hit is pretty much what part or what touched the part. So let's say the player's leg touched the part. The parent of the leg is going to be the character, so we're going to get the player from character, which is the parent of that body part. Now we want to make sure it's actually a player. So let's do if player then. We want to make sure it's a player because we don't want to try and add stats to like another part, because well, obviously that part will most likely not have a leader stats folder and all of that stuff. So we want to make sure we check that it's an actual player. So we can add comments. I'm just gonna put a comment here, button 1 configuration. So we're gonna do all of our stuff for the button right here. So we could wrap this all in a function, but for now we're gonna get the basics of the game down and we're gonna do more managing later. For now we're just going to get our testing scene. I'm not sure what word to use here, but yeah. So if it is the player, then I'm going to do up here local button 1 config equals button 1 dot config. So we're getting that configuration folder instead of the button. Then local button 1 price equals config, or no, button 1 config dot price, and then local button 1 multi to add equals button 1 config dot multi to add. So we're not doing dot value cause, or let me just make sure I set these, because we're just gonna do dot value down here. Even though we could do that, I just prefer doing down here, but you can keep dot value here because we want to get the actual value of these number values, not just the instance value, or if that makes sense. So we've got our setup right here for our first button. So then since we have player, we're gonna do player dot leader stats dot cache dot value minus equals button 1 price dot value. Make sure you add dot value. I usually forget this, but dot value is to make sure you get the value of the instance, not the instance. So this is going to subtract the price value from the user when they step on the button. Here's another check we should do before that. We should do if player.leaderstats.cache.value is greater than or equal to button 1 price.value, then. And we can press Control X and paste that in here with Control V. So we want to check if the player has more or equal to the amount of the price. So if they have the same amount of money as the price, or more than the amount of money for the price, then we're going to give the player their stuff, subtract the cash. So we're going to do player.multiplier.value plus equals button 1 multi to add dot value. So this should be our basics completed, unless I forgot a little thing. So I'm gonna quickly create a UI. Actually, let's just do an else statement just in case, and we're gonna do print person is broke. Sorry. So this is just to check if the player does not have enough money. So I'm gonna quickly create a UI. You don't have to follow along with this. I'm not really going to explain much of what I'm doing for this part, but I'm just gonna do this to show you what the multiplier value is. So script.parent.text equals player.multiplier.value while wait. I don't suggest you do while wait for stats, but this is just a quick test. It's not meant to be super fancy and all. This just gets local player, sets the parent's text to the multiplier value and all of that stuff. Just gonna make this bigger. And cache you should see in the top right. So as you can see, our multiplier is 1 and our cache is increasing. If we touch the button, well, we're too broke. So this might take a bit, but here's one thing. Don't go into the player and don't go into their cache and change it on the client. Click on this current client, current, and then click on it and it should go to current server, and you might go in this little like outer perspective view. Then you can go into players and change their cache, because we're working on the server with our data, so we want to change it on the server. So if we touch this, it might increase multiple times, but as you can see it didn't, and now our multiplier is 6 and we are gaining 6 cash every few seconds. Now if somebody were to lag when they touch this, there is a chance that they're gonna get a lot of multiplier instead of, well, the amount you want to give them. So we're just gonna quickly do a little bit of debounce just for safety. So up at the top we can just do local debounce equals false, or let's just do db. So let's, in our if statement, on supposedly line 19 or whatever line you're on, I space mine out so I can read each part individually. So on the if player leader stats greater than or equal to button price, let's do and dbounce or db equals false. Or actually, let's not do this part. Let's make a new if statement in it. If db equals false, then db equals true, and then we will apply our effects. So we're setting dbounce to true if it's false when the player touches it, and then we're going to wait. This is what you want your delay to be. Let's do task not wait because it's more accurate. You add your delay in here, so I'm just going to do 1 second delay, or let's do 0.78, and then we can do db equals false. So there's a 0.8 second delay, so if the player lags a bit, they won't be able to get a bunch of multiplier on accident because they lagged and touched the part a bunch of times and ran the function a bunch before their cache was removed successfully. This just should be able to protect our system a little bit. Now let's do a little bit in our button manager. Let's do one more little effect. And now let's do alright, so under our touched statement, let's do, or maybe we should do this inside of our touch statement. Well, right now we are wanting to get the player, so let's just go ahead and make a game.player added function. Let's do game.player added connect function. So this is going to be button checking. So when the player joins the game, they're going to be set to the player tag, and then we're going to do button checking. What we're going to do is, if the player has enough cash, the button is going to turn green because we want to at least tell the player that they have enough cash for that button. So in our button, let's go over here and let's copy this color. I'm just going to paste it as a comment right here. You don't have to do this, I'm just going to. So we're going to do player.leaderstats.cache.value, or not .value, .changed connect function. So when the player leader stats cache value is changed, so when this changes from value 1 to value 2, anything in between here is going to run. So what we want to do is check if the player's cache is greater than button 1. So if player.leaderstats.cache.value is greater than or equal to button 1 price.value, then button 1 dot button dot color equals color3 dot from RGB, and you can get a nice little green color. Then you can do else button 1 dot button dot color equals color3 dot from RGB, and paste in your red color code. So when the player's stats change, if the player's cash is greater than or equal to the button 1's price, then we're going to set it to green because the person has more than enough cash needed. But if the person has any other values, if they have less than the price, then we're going to set it to red. So this is our first button 1 configuration. Let's just do another comment here for button 1 config, or button 1 effects, because we might add more effects there in the future. So let's hit base plate, quickly hit play. Let's close out of this. Oh, leader stats is not a valid member of player. So we might want to add a little delay before we do any of this, because since we have 2 game.player added events, we should do it in here, but I'm going to do it over here. You may do it in the other function, and I kind of recommend that, but I'm going to just do this over here. Do a task.wait, because these are both going to run at the same time, and it's gonna end up running this before this is actually created. The cash value or in leader stats is actually created, and we don't want that. So we're gonna just wait a second just for safety. So our cash is gonna increase. I'm just going to go onto the server and quickly increase my multiplier. Let's just say to 10. So as you can see, I'm gaining by 10 now. And once I get greater than 100 cash, it should turn green. As you can see, the button is green, and now if I click on it, as you can see, it is now red because I don't have enough cash. Let's just wait once again. Boom, it's green, and once again it's red. So to add more buttons, well, it's quite simple. You just want to grab your button, duplicate it, drag it to the side, rename it to button 2, change your multi to add. I'm just going to do 10, and this is going to be double the price. We can go into our button manager. You can practically just duplicate these, Control C, paste it in, and change everything that says button 1 to button 2, because obviously you want to change it up. We'll make this more efficient later, so it'll automatically apply all of these effects to each button. But for now, we're going to do it this way, just so we can get the basics of our button. So as you can see, we're just duplicating all of these for now. Just quickly duplicate this all. It's a bunch of lines, but this will eventually be fixed and cleaned up, and we will have a nicer system to work with. Cause this is not quite nice. So let's just quickly finish changing all these values. I'm making sure I change them all. Alright, well, that's a lot of lines just for a few of copy and paste. Yep, this really isn't effective. We could put most of this in a function and just call it a few times, and we would have like 10 lines instead. So let's give this a little try. So I'm just gonna give myself a few multiplier beforehand so I could get a little booster. So let's just get up to 100 cash. As you can see, our cash is going up, and our button lights up. We can click on it or step on it per se. Let's just get a few more multipliers so we can get up there a little quicker. Now we have a 20 multiplier. I don't know, I said multiplier. Oh, this is going much quicker. Let's get 30, and let's wait for our other button to light up. Boom. And now if we hit this, and as you can see, both buttons turned red because we lost all of our cash. As you can see, we've pretty much created the basics of our game, and we should just be able to see if we can do that classic slushy dance trick. Yep, people, I remember seeing people AFK farming this way. Just slashy dance on the button, get to farming. I just noticed I didn't even anchor the buttons. The buttons coming out. But yeah, that's how we have set up the basics of our button simulator game. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Leave any suggestions below on new updates you would like to see for this game. Yeah, see you in the next episode. Bye.